Hello and welcome to our podcast on aging and spirituality. I'm Chris Jensen,
I'm Kathy Lee Taylor.
and we have some really good information for you today, so I hope you are helped by it. We all have issues in our lives, and I wanted to ask Kathy about an unmet need that she has in her life or had in her life that might be an obstacle to her spiritual growth. Is there anything like that in your
Yeah,
life?
this is such a good. I'm really glad you're asking it because I have been personally struggling with this idea recently. I can't remember how it got triggered, but some program I was listening to, I realized that as a child, oh, I know what it was. Somebody had said the things that you don't get met when you're a child oftentimes stop you from where you're trying to go as an adult, right? Isn't and it's exactly what you had said, an obstacle. And I thought, okay, if there was something way back then that I didn't get acknowledged as a kid, because I've always said, oh, I felt unseen and I felt unheard and all of those things. You hear that a lot from people. That's not uncommon, but what I hadn't identified was in what areas of my life I really felt that lacking. I felt like, boy, they missed me on this one.
Mhm.
And what I was able to identify was that I was a very creative child that got no attention for being creative. I was also a very intelligent child that it was never acknowledged. When I was a young child, I first of all started kindergarten when I was 4, and then I was smart enough to do 2 grades in 1 year. So by the time I got to high school, I was 2 years ahead of all of my peers. And that made me very socially awkward. And I felt isolated by that particular thing. But I had no trouble keeping up with school. I finished, 5 years of high school because I'm from Canada and they went to grade 13 at that time. So by the time I finished high school, I was 16 years old and I was off to university to get my BA before I was 19. But none of that was ever acknowledged. Nobody ever said, oh, our kid's really smart. or she does really well in school. It was never talked about. And, when I was a kid, I had such a need for creativity. And I remember doing things like, I would put on my Nancy Sinatra boots and go sing down in the basement like I was singing her song, those boots are made for walking. And that, I remember that. And I would do things like put plays together. I would be the writer, director, and the main actor. Make all the neighborhood moms come, stuff like that. And that was never acknowledged either or encouraged. And so this is not me saying I blah blahing about it, because I've certainly let go of that, but I realized that it was a need that was still there that is holding me back in my life right now in terms of trying to create a new kind of program that I'm using for my coaching. So it was very interesting because, how would I describe this? I was struggling with what the lessons should be. I didn't want to do the lessons in terms of what is it that I have to offer? What is the value that I uniquely bring to the table that I could workshop and give it to somebody else and they could benefit from it? And because of that obstacle in my way, that blockage from those two unmet needs, I was really struggling with the topic. But when I realized that, when I had an awareness of that particular obstacle, I was able to let it go. And the flow for the workshop just came right out of it. It was like,
Yeah. Those
it,
obstacles from childhood, though, I mean, they're tough. And like you talked about, I also was ahead in school, and I was close to 2 years younger than the people in my class. I was small and skinny. And at the time, I didn't realize that I was very small and skinny because I was much younger than everybody else. I was the person in gym that nobody picked on their team, and because
yeah.
I wasn't good, I was smaller and I just wasn't that good. And I remember praying at night to be like everybody else because I knew I was different, but I didn't know why. And there were a lot of challenges there. I mean, I wouldn't, like, I often think of, if I had to come back in another life, I wouldn't want to repeat the teenage years for anything.
Yeah, I
Because,
used the word once.
yeah, because it was very difficult. And, it wasn't until I came to yoga and started to really get in touch with who I really am, that presence within each of us, that I started to realize that, yeah, I am different than everybody else, and I don't want to be like them.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
there's that higher consciousness expressing very individually through us. But those things from childhood, they are hard. They're hard to overcome. How did you get through that?
Because I've had a number of things in my childhood that I needed to heal, there become similarities in that process of being able to forgive, number one, because I was pissed off
Mm.
that my parents didn't acknowledge who I was or what my skills were, or
Mhm.
it wasn't even important enough to like get a mention that,
Mhm.
skipped a grade or get, like I
Mhm.
left for school when I was 16. Like it was like that was absolutely normal or expected or whatever. So there was a important part of it was radical forgiveness. And when you're angry, it is impossible to forgive. So you have to get the anger out first.
Mhm.
I honestly think playing tennis helped me do that because it keeps me physical. And I was raised by a dad who was a sports coach. So I was very physical as a child. There wasn't a sport that I didn't try. And later on, it became one thing that I did instead of a lot of things. And I'm still very physically active, but handling anger on a somatic level, when it's stored in your physical body, that has to go. It has to be released. However, you get to that, it has to be released. And again, as in everything yoga, the awareness of it is first. And I know a lot of people, and this is really a good tip, listeners, if you don't know this already and haven't heard this before, dance. If you know that
Mhm.
you've got energy and anger stuck in your body, dance. Find a Gabriel Roth tape. She is an amazing, I don't even know what she calls her work, but there are these mostly African rhythms. You put them on and you literally just let your body do what it wants to do. And that will release the energy most of the time with the willingness and the awareness and the wanting to go in and let the body just express itself. It will release those somatic traumas. So when
Yeah,
she
I could say that a lot of things in music do that. I mean, my mother she was a concert pianist, and she had the temperament of someone who's into classical music, which is, oh,
up
and,
and down.
I told you about my traumatic experience. I think I'm like a 6 or 7 year old, and I'm taking piano lessons from her old teacher who she dragged out. And of course, I'm not my mother. I'm not a child prodigy. And so she wants me to play scales, classical. I'm getting classical training. Now, all my friends are taking piano or playing chords and songs. So I say to the teacher, well, can't I play chords and songs instead of these scales? And she acted like I had cursed at her or something, and she yelled for my mother and said, Jeanette, your daughter wants to learn chords. And my mother walked in the room and fainted. So
Literally. Oh my God.
literally, she
Drama
did,
queen.
but she did faint on occasion, but she fainted. And so can you imagine what this does to a 6 year old? So I mean, I ran out of the room, and my grandmother, the voice of reason, walked in, and I told her what was going on, and she yells at my mother, and she said, leave the kid alone, and so I said, I don't want to play piano, I want to dance. I just had to get out of that. So I had a real what we call in yoga samskar, and a hang up, a habit about music. And one of the most freeing things I did was to take singing lessons. It was
Wow. Yeah.
opening, opening a door, because I never sang. People always said, oh, don't sing, you don't have a voice. And the first thing the singing teacher said to me was, I can see that you're very nervous. And he said, singing's only about two things: the muscles memorizing the position and confidence. And he said, we'll do 12 sessions to get your muscles to memorize the position. He said, you have no confidence. He said, but as you start to do this, you gain confidence. you're going to be fine. And it was. And it was like, it was something I had blocked
Yes.
that got opened. And anything like that, where we have a blockage, it's very important to allow that flow to come through.
Yes, that is where creativity is very healing.
Mm.
And so we were talking about how you let the anger go first, and I want to just follow up for the listeners. The next step, of course, is the radical forgiveness. On every level you're being, you have to forgive that person for
Yeah.
your experience with them and what they did or didn't do, because it probably looked totally different to them than it did to you.
Mm.
And you just get to the place where you realize they're human, they make mistakes, and it's going to hurt me more to hold on to this than it is to let go.
Mm.
And allow love to go your way. So Dr. Wayne Dyer has a great story. Who he was always very angry at his dad, who was not there for him in his life. And so at one point in his older years, 40s I think it was, he went to his dad's grave, and long story short, ended up saying, from now on, I send you only love. From here on in, I send you only love. If you can do that, you have the energy of forgiveness, and it won't be an obstacle for you anymore. So, and that is a real letting go. That's what letting go is all about. So
That
okay,
forgiveness is the key,
it is
because
powerful.
especially if it's a childhood thing, because the people, your parents, they did the best they could.
Yes, they did.
They thought they were doing the best for you, from
Yep.
their experience.
Yep. Yeah, even though you may feel, and probably that doesn't change, that it was woefully inept or it was anyway. But that's why people who have tough childhoods often become parents, because they want to do it better. They're going to do it than their own folks,
Yeah.
and most of the time they do.
Yeah.
But I'm making stupid mistakes along the way anyway, that their kids come back to them and say, well, if you because Chris and I both have kids. We both have one kid.
Right.
So, you piss them off at some point anyway, no matter how well intended you are.
Right.
Yes, that process is very, very important. But, the thing about and I hope this is something that interests our listeners, the thing about the creativity and the intelligence was, I always knew I was smart, so it was not a big deal for me to feel like, oh, the world needs to acknowledge it. It wasn't that. It would have been nice if my own parents had done it, but it wasn't something that I was striving for. But the creativity was something that I felt was a through line for everything that I do in my life. Like earning a living, like, where did my creativity come into play as far as earning a living? This was one of the mental struggles that I was trying to get over, because I've been an entrepreneur since my early 20s. And it was something that I was very good at. I enjoyed it on a certain level. I made good money at it, but I never felt like my creativity got to play. It never was a part of the process. So when I decided to start becoming a coach, then all this not being able to access creativity became a real concern. I had to stop and think, what is going on here? How come I not how come this flow is lacking? There was a disconnect, and I had to really get back to that feeling of being in connection with flow, a divine essence kind of feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like, at this higher level of where divine love sits, you kind of have to connect into that to have the creative flow moving through all aspects of your life. And that's a process that I've really been growing into and challenging and looking at over the last 3 years, as I've been trying to start, a new, I guess it's a business. I don't like to look at it like that way, because I don't like to see my coaching as money being the end result. It really is not. For me, it's about helping people. I also have to be realistic about how to put it together and organize my time, because time is my most precious commodity. So that ability to tap into a creative flow is really, really important. How does that play out in your life? Do you feel like you're connected to your creativity personally?
Yeah, I feel like for me, it's all a matter of surrender. And that allows the creativity to come through. Like, whenever I've been in a position where I think, oh my God, I better get this kind of job or that kind of job, because, I step back and I meditate and I try to just surrender to see what the divine has in store for me, and something comes different than I've ever thought. And whatever creative ideas I need, they come. They just
Okay,
come. I mean,
makes that easy.
what?
I said, she makes that sound so easy. So if you hear what she just said, you're going to save yourself a lot of wasted time and effort, honestly. I mean, really prick your ears up on that one, because that's the best tip you could ever get when you're in those really struggle moments, like, what do I need to do for a living? How am I going to make money? How am I going to
Yeah,
pay the debt? All
right.
of that. All of it, as urgent as it feels, as scary as it is, in the height of your fear, handling that situation, stop. Get into a place of calm and balance. What am I
It doesn't mean that that's important, getting into the common balance. Doesn't mean you don't commit energy to that. You're actually committing a lot of energy to it, when you pose the question before meditation, and
right?
and that's really important too. I don't want people to think that they should just sit on the couch, but
Oh,
because
yeah, there's going to be action involved. Is that what you
right,
mean?
right,
Yeah.
right,
You're just sitting there waiting for the knock on the door and the Uber guy delivers you $10,000. Oh, that's good. I like
yeah,
that.
right, right.
But you're going to get inspired. You're
You get inspired. That's the thing. You'll get inspired. And I find that opportunities come that I would never have thought about. And there are always opportunities that allow a greater flow of creativity. That's
that
very exciting,
that right there, what you just said is one of the most exciting things about living a yogic path.
Mhm.
You could be completely stumped and just at your wits end trying to rack your brain, and of course that's me. I mean, I still get stuck in my head knows best. It's going to analyze the situation and come up with the right answer. Every darn time I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Mhm.
work. i
Mhm.
have I have to tell myself, okay, here you go again, Kath, jump over Niagara Falls. What's the matter with you? Just
Right.
let go. And but this is really actually a very important point. As you grow and your bhakti becomes stronger, your heart is more open, your flow of love is more accessible to you, so does your trust and your faith grow. Those, for me, those were little seeds. I didn't have trust in God. What does that mean? Like, what
Mhm.
that means? Yeah,
Right.
well, faith, it sounds good, but I don't know what that means,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I had to really come to understand, okay, it was my relationship to um, God became stronger. I still have trouble explaining that to myself sometimes. What does that mean? Well, it means that, I can sit down in the eye of a storm and calm myself and get a response. I
Mhm.
remember on the table the other day, and I haven't even told you about this. I had a mammogram and they found something in the one side. And so they were doing an ultrasound, and I could feel my heart racing. I was starting to panic. I was starting to panic laying there. And I just called out literally from my heart and my mind, God, please make this okay. And I just had this overwhelming rush of love, just, come over my heart. And I just felt like he was there. This is good. I'm going to be okay. And it
Yeah.
turned out to be nothing, which,
Nothing.
could have gone the other way, and I would have still dealt with it, with God. But that's what I'm talking about. You get those reassurances, you get that trust that when you need a response, it will come. There is nothing better on the planet than that. Honestly, that comfort and that faith that when you need that, support, it will be there for you.
I think that's the key right there. Just having that kind of openness,
Yeah.
and being open to something different
Yeah.
than you may have had in mind, you know. I mean,
Always.
than what you know from the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, being open means exactly that. Letting go of any idea that you've had of what the result should be. You have to be
Yeah.
completely open and non-resistant, receptive to what it is that is the next step for you, because it'll have something to do with your own growth.
It will.
It'll have a goodie for you. I want you to know that too. It may feel like it's a lesson, and it may hurt a little bit sometimes, less and less as you go. But most of the times, it feels like you're getting
Great.
goodies.
Yeah, it's great.
You're getting great lessons, and you're getting
Mm.
gifts at the same time. Because you're always left feeling supported and loved, and like
Mhm.
you formed and grown in the process. That's the big. I mean, I remember starting yoga. I wouldn't have said to you, "Oh, I want to have a direct relationship with my divine source." I'd be like, "What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about." But now I'm thinking, I bet there's a heck of a lot more people on the planet that have that same need and don't even realize what it
They
is.
don't realize it. Right. Right.
Yes. And then until they start playing with yoga, they're like, whoa, okay, there's something here in the bush I need to know here. Like, Easter egg hunt. There's one, like you start gathering your Easter eggs and putting them in the basket and putting this picture together. That's what it's been like for the last 40 years. So much fun.
So we hope you have fun with this,
Yeah.
just play with it, think of it as playful in a playful way, and work with it, and let us know how you're doing.
Yeah.
It helps to share these things.
It
Definitely
does.
does.
It helps to be around like-minded people.
Absolutely.
Be here for you. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Yes. Have fun in yoga. Bye.
Bye.